Okay, everyone. Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today, we'll be speaking with Pastor Paul Burton again in regards to an update around Operation Noetics. Paul, how are you going? Thanks for coming on.
Very good. Thank you, Julie, and yourself. I hope you're well.
Yeah, I'm really good. It's just there's so much information coming out on this case in regards to just trying to keep up with it, because this now what you've told me with the hearing on the 15th of March is going ahead, which I thought it was supposed to be mentioned. So
Yeah,
I know that,
yeah. There's been a bunch of things happen since you came along, because you came up on February the 8th and they adjourned the matter, and that was these people's the defendants' last opportunity to try and stop this trial going ahead. But since you were there, what they did is they actually joined them back up with the other people they separated them from, which is Cassie Doubleday and a bunch of others. There's another 4 people, and they put them all back together again, and then they pushed them to the trial date they set for the others,
right.
From the 22nd of May.
Is the fact that they've put them all back together again in the same hearing, is that a good thing?
Not in my view, because the self-represented people are running a case, and they're questioning the committal and a lot of very, very, very important questions of law. They're claiming the committal was irregular, which it was. They still haven't been ever given a proper brief of evidence. There's a whole bunch of things that are just appalling. Fundamental things. If people are not aware, Julia, in this country, it's different to America, but in Australia, we have a thing what's called the right to a fair hearing, or a right to a fair trial. And part of that is, if you're charged with charges, you need to be told exactly what they are, and you need to be presented a brief of evidence, which is the evidence against you. Then you have a chance to prepare a defence for your case. And in this case, they never got a readable brief ever. And it's one of the big issues that's been raised from the beginning, that they got an 80 gigabyte USB stick. And poor Anne, Patrick and Russell, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but they're kind of Luddites, that's the word I use, but they're not very technically savvy. They're a bit older than me. And they have very limited computer skills. You know, they can use emails and stuff like that. But this USB stick is impossible to navigate. It had passwords all over it. There was a lot of information that has no relevance to anybody whatsoever. There was pictures, hundreds of pictures taken from under a road and all this other stuff, but you cannot navigate it. So they don't even know what the true case is against them, because they've changed the particulars, I think, 6 times. This massive USB stick, they've had a number of copies sent to them over the last 4.5 years or something, and it's like the prosecution's making it up as they go, you know, which is a terrible situation, you know. So yeah, and again, to explain this case, I mean, these people were accused primarily, I think 5 years ago, of being part of an international child trafficking syndicate.
That's right.
21 or 28 charges have been dropped because they accused Russell of having, you know, proceeds of crime that he never had. They accused him of having millions of dollars overseas, which he never had, so he couldn't even get Centrelink, he couldn't get legal aid. They were all lies, outright lies. A lot of those charges were dropped because they had no evidence.
That's right.
You know?
And is it right that, sorry to interrupt, but I just recall Dee mentioning this in a previous interview that you guys had, that Patrick and Russell were they had formed the anti-pedophile party as well.
Yeah, I can't remember when they started that, but I think from recollection it was about 2014, I believe.
Yes,
I'm not sure. I'd have to double check that, but around that time, yeah. But yes, they did.
Yeah, and so do you think that also had something to play with them being targeted?
In my view, yeah, I think it is. I think it's definitely malicious. That's certainly the way it appears with the information we're seeing, because to prosecute people that are clearly protecting children that have disclosed sexual abuse is a very strange circumstance. I don't understand how they can do that, or why any kind of lawful authority, you know, would do that to people, charge them for trying to protect children. I find it absurd.
It is absurd. Well, I've been having this conversation with a lot of people ever since my eyes have been open to it, and like everyone's jaw drops. They're like, "What, in Australia? What, this is happening in Australia?" I'm like, yeah. And look, we're not saying that all police and everyone is corrupt. We're saying there's a specific group of people that appear to be operating like a criminal syndicate, because this is
that's
I don't know,
the
this
case.
is from my personal, you know, from what I've been able to...
it, for all practical purposes, appears like some kind of projection, because this wasn't an international child trafficking syndicate. So to broadcast that in the media was absurd. You know, these are two Rhodesian gentlemen, you know, from Africa, white Africans that were friends for a long time, different backgrounds. One was a GP and the other was actually a client. He was going to his regular doctor because he suffers, because he was in the Rhodesian army. You know, Patrick actually doesn't like to talk about it. He's very PTSD. And this is another thing that concerns me, Julia, that they don't really accommodate for people's health and struggles. He's highly PTSD. This man has significant hearing difficulties. He's survived driving over 4 landmines in Rhodesia, fighting in the army. He's seen some shocking things. I wouldn't even like to imagine what he's been through. And now he is in Australia, and he's being persecuted for protecting children that are clearly disclosed sexual abuse.
And just for the viewers who haven't seen the past interviews that might be hearing this for the first time, how did they first encounter these children that they were trying to protect? What was the sort of that door that opened? Because everyone sort of has...
I believe would have to ask them. We can actually call them, like I said to you before. I've let them know that we're doing this today, so I can give them a phone call and bring him in on the phone. I think Anne and Patrick. I don't think Russell's available today, but we can ask for clarification on that. But in my understanding, and they have to be careful around, because they do have the well, technically there's not suppression, but they've got bail conditions, and I've had a look at those. But you know, in an open justice system, they can talk about things, but clearly they can't identify the children and do anything. Sub judice seems to be the issue around courts, to do anything to jeopardise a case. But they do have a right to state the fact that they're pleading not guilty of these offences against them, and they have a right, in my view, to at least speak openly about their position without giving anything personal that could threaten the case away. You know? So in my understanding, there was a woman involved, I think it's now passed away, who was a specialist in dealing with children that disclosed sexual abuse. I believe her name was Frida Briggs. And Frida Briggs did some interviews involving some of the children in this case, is my understanding. And I believe Patrick saw some of that footage, and I believe he actually saw the footage of the children's disclosures and was horrified at what he saw. Russell, I believe, had contact with at least 1 or 2 of the children. And the evidence that was presented to him was the same. I heard something to the tune of about 42 independent reports of abuse of these children, not just Frida Briggs, but all different reports. And there was also a number, I think 4, I could be again wrong with specifics here, but 4 people assigned in the family court matter that checked on those children and made their appraisals of whether they believed the children were speaking the truth or not. And they all came back with a no-brainer, saying they didn't believe these children were coached at all. And it was a fair and reasonable assumption that they were speaking the truth. But that was all kind of blocked from the family court. You know, it's a very, very weird situation. So the family court, in essence, didn't look into that information. So I've made decisions without looking at this damning information. And this is one of the core issues I've seen just in my own case on April the 5th too, which is about state condoned child trafficking. But this is what seems to happen in our legal system. And I think it's something that's going to have to be addressed very soon if we're going to have any kind of legal system that people have any faith in anymore. Because they remove these things, like, you know, they even said that to Patrick, Russell and Anne. They said, they kind of implied that they can't use self-defense as a defense, and self-defense, necessity and duress are fundamental defenses at law, and self-defense is defense of yourself or another. So if you have a reasonable belief,
natural law principles,
fundamental common law too, like it's a founding democratic principle of, you know, like the right to self-defense of another is a valid defense against anything. So they have a very valid defense, but because of what they've been charged with now, because it's changed so many times over the last 4.5 years, it's like they're kind of saying, well, we don't need to discuss anything to do with disclosures of sexual abuse of the children, because that's got nothing to do with conspiracy to defeat justice. But then you go, but hang on, you know, the only reason there is any alleged conspiracy, which isn't a conspiracy, I might add anyway, is because these people were clearly trying to defend children that they believe were sexually abused. So it goes to the very foundation of the case. But no, we don't want to hear that. That's not part of it. And they do the same in my case, like they remove the founding thing around what actually happens and take it away, and the court makes it so specific that it becomes, I don't know, it's like, I don't know the exact word for it, but you don't get justice. You don't get an inquisitorial system that says, well, hang on a minute, you know, Had these children not disclosed sexual abuse, then these people would never have even contemplated doing any of the things they're alleged to have done. Yeah.
Can you, just to clarify in layman's terms, for those who don't know the system in law or anything like that, what does it actually mean when you're charged of conspiracy to defeat justice? What does that sort of mean?
It's a federal offence, a Commonwealth offence. We have two kinds. Again, this is just, it's a bit like law for dummies. And with my understanding, I'm a paralegal. I'm not a lawyer or a barrister, but I've learned a lot in 5.5 years now, nearly 6 years of court. I learned a significant amount. I can't remember the exact what the actual sentencing is on it, but it's a serious indictable offence. So it's an indictable offence which carries a jail term. I can't remember if it's 5 years or 10 or more, possibly. It could be it's a very conspiracy to defeat justice, a very serious charge. But it's an interesting one because I don't think it's had a great appearance in our system. It's relatively recent. And again, to help people understand this case, when these people were first charged, they were charged with child stealing children. Then when they were told that you can't, because, the grandmother we're going to call shortly had lawful custody of her child, how can you charge someone for stealing your own grandchild you've got custody of? You can't. So they changed it to harbouring. They did that in the middle of committal. They actually just completely changed the charges at committal to harbouring, which is like, having and harbouring the child, but not actually stealing the child. Then when they realised that they couldn't harbour because they had lawful custody and they didn't harbour, they changed it to conspiracy to defeat justice, which means they conspired to somehow or other stop another court, and in this case it was the family court, from doing something. But then we helped them with submissions and said, well, that's not true because the family court could hear it ex parte, which means without them being there. So it didn't stop the family court making any decisions. So there's no way that it could defeat the course of justice because the course of justice had finished by the time the orders were made in the family court. So then what they did is they changed it to conspiracy to defeat justice for something that they might do in the future.
Oh my God.
I mean, you can't make this up. This is like Monty Python on steroids. So now it's a conspiracy to do something that they haven't done yet, but they were going to do.
Okay, and all right.
Very difficult in my view to prove at law. I mean, they're going hell for leather to try and lock these people up, and you need to ask yourself why are they doing this, and why do they continue to proceed?
During the committal, they actually changed the particulars on the day.
On the day of the committal, yes, going back a couple of years now, but there's a Supreme Court challenge of that. Russell himself raised a Supreme Court challenge of the committal because there was a bunch of things come up. One, they didn't have a brief of evidence. They didn't know the evidence before them. Two, they dropped the child stealing charge and changed it to harbouring, but they did it in the middle of committal, completely withdrew the charges, instituted new charges, ordered them, or what they called instituted them from the bench. In other words, the judge instituted the new charges against them with substantive changes in particulars, and the particulars make the charge, like, what is it I did and who were the people and where was I? All of these factors, what state was I in? Queensland and New South Wales, when, where, what, how? They're the particulars. They changed them all. Right, but they got in. That's a railroading because if you're going to committal, you need a defendant has the right to know the evidence before them and have a right to know exactly what they're charged with. You can't just change it on the day, And this is what they did, and they've changed it since. But they've also changed it since.
It reminds me of I know this is really probably might be a bit out of line. I'm going to say it anyway. When you see two children arguing, and then one goes, nah, I've decided I don't want to play anymore. I've decided that I am going to change all the rules in the game, blah, 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 because it's not suiting my needs anymore. That's what it sounds like to me. Like this is, we're talking about locking innocent people away for a long time for protecting children. This is a serious matter. And to be able to hear that this is happening in the courts, it's absolutely ridiculous.
It's crazy. It really is, Julia. It just astounds me every time. And said the fact that they've gone on for nearly 4.5+ years. I mean, Anne had a ankle bracelet on for 2.5 years. They've had draconian bowel conditions. They had their life decimated. I actually helped them with a quote in their own submission. I said, these people have already paid 1,000 times for the crimes they never committed. They've already paid their dues for something they didn't do. Their lives have been decimated anyway. It's like, why are you doing this? and what do you hope to achieve, and what kind of system do we have in this country where the sexual abuse of children is hidden away, and as a consequence, the people that do that, of course, in my view, are complicit. You're condoning it. You know, if you ignore children disclosures of sexual abuse, you're condoning that action. And further to that, I think, which is really important, let's say even in the prosecutions, you know, let's say what we say at law is taking the prosecution's argument at its highest. So taking the other party's arguments at its highest. Let's say the children did make it up. Right? I don't believe that for a moment. I've seen one testimony. I do not believe that's true. Very hard for a 6-year-old child to make something up, particularly with this kind of detail and with the evidence. But let's say they did. Still, the argument for self-defense is if that person has a reasonable belief. Any reasonable person would believe that that child was telling the truth. Now, I believe what I've seen, and I consider myself a reasonable person. I believe any other person in this country, if they were to see those disclosures from those children, which you're not going to see because of the family law court rules hiding it to protect the children. You know, this is the argument, which I'm also very distressed about, because in this case, it's clearly not what's happening. It's putting the children at much greater risk. But this is the whole point. So even if it wasn't found to be true, if a person reasonably believed it, then that's still a valid defence, and it shouldn't go forward on those grounds alone. You know? But look, I might give, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, I can try and call Anne. I did tell her that we call around this time.
Before you do, actually, just explain, how is Anne connected to Patrick and Russell? Like what, because she's got this is involving a different child, isn't it?
Well, this was her grandchild.
This is her grandchild. So how is she being in the same category? Like,
well, my understanding, they're saying she's conspired to defeat justice in association with them. So they've helped her to defeat justice in one way or another through connection. Now, Anne does know Russell and Patrick, and she has had some contact with them. The really disturbing thing in this case, because it was originally a child trafficking syndicate, is Anne, I know for a fact, never even knew one of the other defendants, who's a significant defendant, _Ksy Doubleday. Anne never even knew her before this all came together. So
she's the mother.
She's a mother, of two of the children involved in this case, you know, who was, I think, hiding for a number of years.
That's right.
For a long time. Anne's case is different. I said Anne had lawful custody. She didn't break any laws. So she's been tied in somewhere. In fact, one of the judges, Justice Clare, I was actually listening in on one of the things with Justice Clare when she was making a judgment around Anne just in this process. And she actually mixed Anne up with Ksy and called her by the wrong name and said, oh, Ksy's directions hearing. I said, well, actually, no, it's Anne's. And if you can't even get that right, Your Honour, I have a serious concern, because the two things are, there's no connection between the two cases. And Anne doesn't know Ksy, is not interested in even knowing Ksy, to be honest. She knows nothing about the woman. So she's really distressed about the fact that she's even been roped in with people she doesn't know. You know, she's always claimed that she's up north end of Queensland, up near Townsville somewhere. She's always wanted her case heard on its own. So if you've got a case against me, then hear it on my own so I can see the evidence against me and just argue the case. Don't put me in with 8 people, of which some I've never met, with a massive brief of evidence, most of which has got nothing to do with me. You know?
Well, let's give her a ring if she's interested in having a chat. Just to,
no, I know she was up for it. So we'll see if we can get her now. And I said, it may be hard for her to hear you. I'm just using my phone here, so we're going real old school.
That's cool.
But I can always. Hey Anne, how you going?
Yeah, all right.
You're all good in a world gone nuts.
Yes, totally.
Look, I'm just doing this live with Julia at the moment, Julia Starr, just talking about your case. And I know there's lots of things we have to be very careful about with it, but I was just sharing some stuff with Julia about what's happened to you, about things I feel comfortable talking about. And I just wondered, and you may find it hard to hear Julia when I'm talking because she's on my Zoom and I've got earphones in, so you may not be able to hear her, so I might have to repeat things that she asks. But just to clarify for me and for the people that are watching this or will be watching this, you were charged originally with child stealing, is that right?
Yes.
Right.
When I had lawful custody, though, I had court-ordered custody.
So you had.
I was actually picked up without a recovery order also.
Okay, so a recovery order is like an order they make in a family court if somebody breaks a family court rule or regulation around a child custody issue. The first thing a family court's supposed to do is issue a recovery order.
That's exactly right.
But so there wasn't even a recovery order issued in your case because you hadn't done anything.
No.
So they hadn't even done that. So they didn't even
No.
exercise the jurisdiction that they had. If they had an issue, they could have done that, but they didn't.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I was actually on my way back to Townsville when I got arrested.
Right.
And then that charge that went on for about 18 months, I suppose. I had to wear a tracker for 2.5 years, but within that 18 months that had gone on, and then it got discharged and dismissed. But before that happened, before I got back to Townsville, I had been detained in Brisbane, and what they done is they trying to think of the name of it, the legal name of it. Now I'm stuffed.
Oh, that's all right. That's all good. I know you have senior moments.
Yeah, definitely.
I have them myself. So you were saying they actually arrested you on your way back to get to court, wasn't it?
Yes, there was only one train leaving Wauchope, going through Wauchope that day, and that was to Queensland. And when I was trying to get back, I got to the train station with my grandson, and I could see they were sitting there. I could see it was them as soon as I saw their pants,
and
their
then
shoes.
And they arrested you and they locked you up then as well.
Yeah, they took me to Port Macquarie,
and
then they extradited me from Port Macquarie to Brisbane. David Miles, from the Senior Sergeant Detective from the CPIU in Townsville, he actually came down with another detective and they drove me from Port Macquarie to Brisbane where they had charged me for the child stealing, which, like, I could never succeed because I had lawful custody. They had tried to say I had abducted my grandson. I harboured him. The court orders clearly said that the child lived with the grandmother, and so I couldn't harbour him. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. And they did that at committal, didn't they? It went for like 1.5 years and 2 years, went to committal, and then right in the committal, they dropped the child stealing charge and changed it to harbouring or something, didn't they? Right?
Well, I think that was with Patrick and Russell. My charge, my child stealing charge actually was a state charge, and it got dropped in Townsville.
Right.
And just before they dropped the charge, they charged me again with conspiracy. It then went down to Brisbane to become, so that I became a co-defendant in the Operation Noetics. And when I got down there, on the first day of committal, they actually discharged and dismissed everyone's charges.
Right.
And then they recharged everyone from the bench. You know, they changed charges, they changed particulars. They've changed particulars like 6 times now. They just keep on changing it all the time.
Yeah, and the other thing that came up too, I was talking, I know Julie might have some questions, but I'll get a couple of things out here. But the other thing too is in all this time, the brief of evidence, like, and again, if anyone's watching this and doesn't understand, when you're charged with an offence, you're supposed to get a brief of all the information before you. You were given that on a USB, and it was something like at least 60 to something like 80 gigabytes plus or something.
Paul, at one part of it, they said it was 1 terabyte, which would have been 240-foot semi-trailer loads of paper. I'm up to about 20 brief sticks USB sticks they've given me now.
Yeah, they keep resending different versions of it all the time.
Look, it was really hard to follow. They wouldn't give us a paper brief, so I'm totally computer illiterate, so I couldn't read it properly. I've had to have people try to help me when they can, but it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
in the brief, I'll just tell you that in the brief, one of the things in there, like, it was a data dump. That's what it was. They chucked all this data in, and there was 3,000 pictures of Bitumen Road, just bitumen in there. So, I mean, they were stacking that
I saw that,
to confuse us.
They were pictures from a camera under the road or something, weren't they? Like looking down from under a car and taking of a moving road or something. That was just ridiculous.
They, from what I could see, they looked like still pictures, but they were definitely only of bitumen. There was nothing else there, just a,
so it's just 3,000 pictures just put in.
And if you want to count all the others, there was more. There was ones of cement slabs in the middle of nowhere.
How does this make sense?
Even the privacy in it, because I didn't know most of my co-defendants, but the privacy in it, there was other people mentioned that, and they showed their licenses front and back. They showed the credit cards front and back, so anyone could have went and used those.
That's right. I heard that from Russell.
Didn't even know these people. Never met them in my life.
Yeah, they actually, in a sense, published the people's. Julia's listening at this as well, of course. But they actually published their credit card details and stuff like that through this.
Yeah, they gave it to us all in the brief, and I'd never known these people. And
so they all got each other's credit card details and stuff.
They had tried to link me to the other woman in the case, the water case, but I had never ever met her or her girls ever until I actually went into the courtroom and I met her there. The same as I think there's two other defendants that one I still haven't met. Another one, she's not even part of my charge at all. She's only part of the other lady's charge. So most of these, like I said, at least half these people I'd never met. Russell I'd only met for probably, an hour one night, and then the next morning for 3 hours.
Okay, so that's the only contact you had with him?
Yep, that was it. Okay. Even Patrick, it was, I hardly had any contact with Patrick.
Wow.
At all. Which is, it's absolutely ridiculous. They never ever paid. They was trying to say that, Patrick got this motel and all the rest of it, but I actually gave Patrick for that motel. Everything I got, I paid for.
Just got to ask a question.
I didn't have anyone,
Julia wants to ask a couple of questions. I may have to narrate, but I'm going to try and put this little mic up. Let me know if you can hear this or not, and I'll repeat her questions. But I'll just get Julia to ask a couple of questions.
Okay. Hi, Anne. Hope you can hear me. So if you can't, obviously, Paul will repeat it. But obviously, you don't have to answer this if you don't feel comfortable. Just the first question would be, do you feel like you were specifically targeted?
If you couldn't hear that, her question was, and do you feel like you were specifically targeted?
Oh, definitely. I was definitely targeted. It was a setup. There was no doubt about it.
Why?
They were surveillancing me before I'd even left Townsville, because I'd made contact with Patrick, who I didn't know, through a Facebook site, as everyone gets in these groups and you get talking to everyone. But, yes, I was definitely targeted. There was no doubt. When they arrested me, they actually said to me, I asked them why they hadn't put out an Amber Alert for my grandson, and they said because we knew he wasn't in any harm, at any harm, that you weren't going to hurt him. And which I find no recovery order, custody, no Amber, know.
Yeah, it's weird.
And the other thing is, it states in the brief of evidence, it shows that they followed me and they knew where I was the whole time from when I left Townsville, before I even left Townsville, on the very first day I left.
Yeah.
And
I think
the fact that they knew that, they could have picked me up at any time before that.
Yeah. I think Julie wants to ask another question. I'll repeat it for her.
I was just hoping to understand, why do you think you were targeted? What was, you know?
Julie's asking the question is like, why do you think you were targeted? I think you might have to be careful around that one. I don't know.
Yes,
Anne.
please take.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to be a bit careful with that, because it goes right back to 2015. I think it had started, and it's something that I probably shouldn't mention.
That's okay.
No,
That's
no,
okay.
We won't go there at this point.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No worries.
Anything else, Julia?
Look, not off the top of my head. I've just had a bit of a mind
We have
blank.
a senior moment too.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to have a chat to Patrick in this meeting as well, Anne, so we won't keep you for much longer. But the next date is March the 15th, and that's at the Brisbane District Court again from 10 o'clock.
And I'll be flying down to Brisbane on Monday morning.
Yeah, so you have to keep coming in all the way to Brisbane every time they want you to appear in person, let alone 4.5 years, 2.5 years with an ankle bracelet, you said?
2.5 years with an ankle bracelet.
Yeah.
I've taken photos of the damage I had of that. It was horrific. I'd had electric shocks. I had bruises all over me. I had all sorts of things going on. You're not supposed
to have them on for more than a certain period of time, are you? Because they've got high levels of EMF.
12 months.
Yeah. So
from what I can understand, and it was 2.5 years.
And that's locked onto your body.
It was actually making me sick in the end.
Yeah, so it's locked onto your body, so you can't remove it.
No, you can't.
Yeah, so for 2.5 years.
I definitely realised that that's what was making me sick at the time, because when I did get it taken off, within 4 weeks my health started improving out of sight.
Yeah, straight away afterwards. Well, at least you've had that off for a while now. It's one small consolation in this disaster.
And I'm not too scarred up.
Okay. Yeah, anyway, so March the 15th, I think it's from 10 a.m. and that's really kind of the defendants, that's your last essentially at this point, it's your last opportunity to really challenge this matter going to trial. And they've already I've used the word railroaded because I feel like it is, but they've really kind of forced you back into a trial with the other people. When they separated the trial, they've joined you back together and they've set a date from the 22nd of May or something, haven't they?
Yes, well, when they separated us, I was then with Patrick and Russell, and then when they put us back together, they put Cassie Waters into the case, who I never ever knew or had anything to do with. It's really it's really weird the way that they have put me in with people I don't even know. Well,
I think when you're talking about a conspiracy to defeat justice, or you accuse people of being part of an international child trafficking syndicate, you would think those people might know each other, wouldn't you?
Definitely.
You know, the fact that you don't, I find it very hard to see how anyone can conspire to defeat justice with people that they didn't even meet before they were charged.
It appears that they were trying to connect the two cases together, mine and the other lady's, the mother. For some reason, maybe to build a case. I'm not sure, but I definitely never knew her or her children.
Yeah. Well, because I can remember at one time, and I did say with Julie, I was listening, I think it was Justice Clare talking, and I was just listening on one of the phone-in links, because you're allowed to in an open justice system. But I remember Justice Clare actually getting you confused with Cassie Doubleday / Water. You know?
Yes, she made a written judgment, and made it on Cassie Water instead of me when it was my direction hearing. So she put the judgment on the wrong person, didn't bother to correct it.
So that's a bit odd in itself, isn't it, that a judge would actually completely confuse somebody with another individual with a completely different matter and a completely different history that you never knew, and actually confuse the two of you. I mean, it wouldn't give me a lot of faith in their ability to make the right decision if they can't even get the name of the defendant correct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that there has been some comments by judges made which have been really out of bounds, to be honest, to defendants, labelling and categorising, you know.
Yeah, I remember that because I accused Russell. I remember because I saw the transcript of Magistrate Gett and that one. But he accused when Russell tried to raise the stuff about the sexual abuse or disclosures from children, Magistrate Gett shut him down and said, if you continue, I'll take action against you for defamation or something, for criminal defamation, and was really, really just shut him down.
Well, I had a solicitor at the time, as you know, Paul Serene Tepaha, and she came in and she was, I have the transcripts, she was treated absolutely terribly. And she was also threatened by Magistrate Gett.
Yeah.
But even though when it come up to abuse and that, she was the one that said, we'll close the courts. I think the courts need to be closed. And we did close the courts for a little while, just while children's names and things were being mentioned.
And she ended up losing her licence, didn't she, Serene?
She did. Yeah. She had a licence suspended, which absolutely turned her life upside down, as she was really targeted. Magistrate Gett reported her to the Victorian Legal Board, and that's when she got her licence suspended.
Wow. Oh, look, and we don't hate the time. I think we better call that up for now, because I've got to try and call Patrick as well, and I'm looking at the time with Julia here. But look, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing with us.
See you on see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, and Julia's saying thank you very much. She's got a big smile on her face here. I'm sorry you can't hear her. We'll do this better next time. We just had some Zoom issues with getting the right numbers, and I thought it's easier to call you. Julia's coming along on March the 15th anyway, so I think you'll be catching up with her.
I'll see you there. I'll be there on Monday.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're there at the evening, but we're going to have a little get together. I'll talk to you about for a bit of a social thing, so we can at least try to turn this horrific situation into something mildly positive for all of us, so we can at least turn it into like a social event, you know.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, and have something positive and have a couple of drinks together. All right. Well,
definitely. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, God bless, Anne, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Right. I'll see you later.
Okay.
Thanks, so.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Well, there you go. From the horse's mouth.
That's it.
Interesting bit about Serene too. A lot of people are not aware of that, but that was instrumental. There were some other things raised about Serene, but interestingly, that was the core issue, in my view, that was the reason that she was struck off, you know, had lost her licence to practice, was as a consequence of helping and assisting Anne Greer. And a lot of the public may not be aware of that, those that know Serene.
Yeah, I actually met her maybe I think it was last weekend, and just seeing what she's been able to bounce back from. It's incredible, her power and her strength and what she's building. It's just she's a legend, that one. Yeah.
Serene, she doesn't hold back, does she? She's feisty. Woo.
Oh yeah. Very funny too. Very funny. Yeah. Do you want to give Patrick a call? Or?
Yeah, I'll try and call Patrick, because I'm looking at the time, and I know you were trying to keep these things as succinct as you can. So we'll just jump in, maybe get Patrick and see if we can grab Patrick and see what. All right. And hopefully we'll be able to get him, you know. I did tell him a rough kind of time I'd be calling, so I hope he can answer. He's most probably in the toilet or something. I don't know. Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, Patrick, it's Paul. How are you?
Hello, Paul. I'm all right, man. How are you going?
I'm good. Look, Patrick, I'm actually on this pre-record on this live cast with Julia at the moment. You won't be able to hear her while I'm talking to you, unfortunately, because I'm just calling you on my phone. But Julia's we just had Anne on before and had a chat, but I just wanted to have a chat with you about a few things that I believe we can talk about with your massive court case and what's coming up, if you're all cool.
Okay.
Yeah. Firstly, just so I understand, because there's so much going on with this case.
Sure.
You were originally charged with, your charges have changed a number of times in your case, haven't they? Like from the first time you were charged, there's been a lot of changes in information from the beginning. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. The charges, just about every time we appeared in court for the first year, they kept changing.
So they just kept changing things. And I understand from what Anne was saying too, at the committal, which I know is still under judicial review at the moment, at the committal, they actually dropped a whole bunch of charges against different people and reinstituted new charges within the committal, didn't they?
That's correct, they did.
Yeah, yeah. And at that time, they actually prosecuted you, or they actually committed you for offences, state charges that occurred in New South Wales, but you were in you were in a Queensland court, weren't you?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I believe that under Section 80, that's not allowed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they continue to insist that it is allowed.
Yeah.
And yet they dropped a whole lot of charges on the same basis against Dr. Russell Pridgeon.
Yeah. And look, I'm just gonna stretch the envelope here and ask things, and we can't identify children or anything like that, but what Julie and I were talking about with all of you involved in this case, with yourself and Russell and Anne, that I know personally anyway, with those, because I know you personally, but I know from your position, you've always argued that the case here was that you were protecting children that you really believed were being abused.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were told by a certain professor that they were being abused, and she even wrote to the police and told the police about it. And they went and charged everybody anyway, what with child stealing, child harboring, child, you name it.
Yeah, but you saw testimonies of those children or something. What made you believe that they were being abused?
Well, I had a lady friend of ours, a paralegal, was actually helping out the grandmother, and just on that alone, there was proof that that child was being abused. And on that basis alone, I would have helped that grandmother. And when the professor disclosed that the little girls were being abused by the father, that there was no question that one had to help them.
Yeah, so you felt you had no choice in the circumstances whatsoever.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And also in this time, the other thing that came up was about this brief of evidence. I know you had representation for quite some time, not that they really did much, but you got like a massive software brief on USB sticks or something, didn't you? So, and you wouldn't really know how to find your way through it, or it'd be difficult for you?
Absolutely. I haven't a blooming clue what to do with it. I don't even know where to start. And in fact, since booting the lawyer into touch, I only received the balance of whatever he had in his files a few days ago. And they want me to go to trial supposedly in May. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And those USB sticks, you got sent heaps of them, or has you got a big pile of them or something like that?
There's easy, maybe about 10 altogether, maybe even more.
Yeah. So you have no idea of the actual evidence against you?
No, not at all. They haven't disclosed it at all.
Yeah.
In fact, what they've done is told us that they're only going to use half of the evidence, but yet they haven't disclosed to us the evidence that they intend to use against us.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, it's ludicrous.
Yeah, look, I'm just going to get Julie to ask a couple of questions. I may have to repeat them from her because you won't be able to hear her. So I'll just get her to wait. If you just wait patiently here, and I'll just let Julie ask her questions, and then I'll ask you what she says.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So, firstly, I want to say, how much I admire, people like
she's just saying basically how much she admires people like yourself standing up for these kind of things, and she has an immense amount of respect for you. She's coming again on March the 15th, I might add, just like she did on the 8th. So you definitely have a huge fan, Patrick, for doing the right thing. So
she's very kind of her, but I believe any adult in the same situation would have done exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, Julia, fire away.
Yeah, so it all sounds absolutely ludicrous. Do you think that you guys have a chance of actually winning?
She said, do you think you have a chance of actually winning?
Absolutely, 100% chance. I see no way it can go any other way.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think like self-defense to me is a very, very strong arguable defense, self-defense of another. And I think if any person has a reasonable belief that a child's being sexually abused and they act on that, they're not breaking any law. They're actually doing something lawful.
That's correct, and I'm not sure if this is the means on which to disguise it, but the one father actually threatened my family.
Right.
What?
I said the one
as a
father
result,
threatened his
reacted
family.
accordingly.
Yeah, one of the fathers threatened his family, you know.
Wow.
So it obviously got very personal.
Well, he threatened my daughter and myself.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
Anyway.
They're not helpful either.
Another question.
Another question from Julia. Just hang on. Yeah.
What are the chances of actually returning these children back to their care, to their mothers, and obviously to Anne as well?
I don't know if I can maybe answer that better than Patrick. She's asking what are the chances of the children being returned back to the other parents from where they've been put into harm, you know?
Well, right now, all that's happened is they were given straight back to the fathers, irrespective of what has gone down in the past. They didn't even have a medical being off before being given back to the fathers.
So they didn't even check.
Sorry?
Yeah, they didn't even check.
No, they didn't care. They just handed it straight back to the fathers. How can they do that? And the one father had an AVO out against him for the mother and one of the children, and yet the judge placed the children back in custody of him anyway. And then when they found the mother and the children, they placed the kids back with him. In fact, he came to collect the children.
Wow, that's nuts.
That's disgusting. Those poor girls, one is self-harming, other one wants to run away. There's just so much going on there, and the police don't care.
Yeah, it's tragic.
So what about going back to their mother? Like, do you think we'll be able to get them back home?
Do you think we'll be able to get them? They'll be able to get them back home. I mean, I could almost answer that, Patrick, but I think that's like the court made a decision and placed them with the alleged perpetrators.
A lot of people are asking that.
Yeah. Well,
that's correct, and I believe that the grandparents in the one instance applied for custody of those children, and yet they weren't even considered. They were just given back to the perpetrator. Yeah, yeah.
So at this point, the problem, I think, Julia, and I can share this too on Patrick's here, but the problem you've got in this situation that it's been already 4.5, 5 years.
Yeah.
That this has already gone on for. So that's all the time that these children have been returned back, because that's time you'll never get back. And this is one of the issues. And some of them are quite a bit older now.
Yeah.
No?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I think they've got to be going on 13.
Yeah,
the two little girls.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the couple of children actually getting older. They're almost becoming young adults soon, or moving into puberty and stuff. Yeah. So it's very hard. You know, like you're not going to be able to fix the damage that's done. Yeah.
Well, they've lost their childhood thanks to him anyway.
Yeah, it's tragic. All right. Well, look, March the 15th, Julia's coming up. That's the Brisbane District Court again. We're asking the public to support, because I think it's very much in the public interest. I don't think people should be perpetrated for trying to protect children that they genuinely believe were being abused, seriously abused, as you did, Patrick, and certainly Anne and Russell. So I'm astounded that this matter's continued. And I suppose we just have to pray together that some kind of semblance of justice prevails, and that even the Australian public start to wake up to what's happening here and recognise that our system is clearly failing.
Well, I hope the public turns up in force, because the CDPP, the AFP, and the courts need to be made aware of what's going on here, and that the public knows what they are doing.
Yeah, yeah.
They can't continue to hide this and hide there amongst themselves.
And it would be shocking, because I mean, you're from Rhodesia originally, but I mean, were you shocked at how you've been treated and what's happened to you in this country?
Very much so. I'm absolutely disgusted and horrified at the performance of these people. And we came from a third world country to this country, supposed to be a first world country, and I'm afraid the corruption and cover-ups occur at the highest levels.
And again, I know you don't like to talk about it, but you were actually a member of the Rhodesian army or something for some significant time as well, weren't you, overseas?
I was,
military.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're former military. Yeah.
7 or 8 years, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And also in this situation, it's been very hard for you, because because I know, because personally, but I mean, it's easier for you on a phone, but it's hard for you to hear. You can't even hear what's going on in court. It's very difficult for you to self-represent.
Yeah, very much so. I actually have the phone very close to my ear just to hear you talking.
Right now.
I was in court was in court yesterday, and even then I've got new hearing aids. I struggled, but that's because the guy from the CDPP tends to talk through his bum. And you don't even get him close to the microphone, thank God. But we struggled to listen to him, and unfortunately, he's been misleading the court for a couple of years now, and I'm tired of it. The truth needs to come out.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're kind of running a little tight on time, but I think unless you got any other questions, Julie, are you all good? No, she's nodding and smiling here. Look, yeah, she's just sending a love. Thank you for coming on and talking with us, Patrick. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Julie, for everything.
Yeah, and he's saying thank you for that too, so you can hear that.
Yeah.
And I'll see you myself. I'll most probably be speaking to you before, no doubt, but I'll see you on the 15th there at the Brisbane District Court, 415 George Street. We'll be outside, I think, from 9 a.m. in the morning, going there. And it starts from 10 a.m. and that's a hearing to see if we can do anything about stopping this charade from continuing.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is a charade, that's for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, God bless, Patrick, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Paul. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Wow.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
You know? So I don't, in my view, Julia, I mean, I understand quite a bit about the law. I don't think there's anything there that's untoward. And people have a right when they've been wrongfully charged, or they're not, guilty of an offence, they have a right to let the public know, particularly something that this is distressing.
Yeah.
My things, I don't see any issue with that, and we're being very respectful of laws around identifying people that anything will be problematic. So I think we're all fine in that department as far as I can tell. Again, if there is any issues as a result of this live cast, my suggestion would be they would have to contact us to let us know that it's a problem and ask us to take it down. Yep. I don't believe they can just charge you, but I've done everything I can to do this lawfully and respectably. But I think we are in a democracy. We're certainly told we're a democracy. I think it's important that people should know these things, and most importantly, people need to start attending these court cases.
They do.
Yeah.
And even Anne said herself that after the previous the hearing that got adjourned when we were there, they were on their best behavior because we were all there witnessing what they were saying, which is interesting, because imagine if there wasn't anyone there.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the thing, the public watching is a big thing, and there's galleries and all courts, and the courts are open in this country. I've had one of the most distressing things for me, not most distressing, but it's been concerning. I've had a lot of contact for people going like, can we come on March the 15th? Are we allowed in? And it's like, it's an open court. We're a democracy. That's a question that shouldn't need to be asked. Of course you can come in. It's intimidating, you see, for people because they see sheriffs and all that and they think, I can't do this, I can't do that, but you're allowed in. The court does have the power to close a court if they start to identify children and they want to protect children. That's the argument. So we can say, okay, I understand that, but the court has to then tell you we're closing the court and ask you to leave until they unclose the court, and then you leave. That's the way it goes, but you have every right to go in. So I think people need to know that they've got to get over this fear thing. It's like a nanny state thing that people are almost frightened to come into court. Like, I think it was JFK, I know we've got to close, but I think it was JFK that was quoted as, I think the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society or something. But JFK just said that, that these secrecy laws don't do any service a lot of the time to an open justice system, and if they can in effect be misused, and if it shuts things down from the public being made aware of things, it's actually problematic for a democracy.
Well, the secrecy, which is fueled to push more control onto the people, control, whether that is depending on what outcome they're wanting, and the more control you enforce, to me that's just, people think that we're living in a free country here, or that we have freedoms, that we have our freedoms. And I am not personally, no one can take my freedom away from me because I have that in here. But when you've got individuals that maybe perhaps aren't really, they rely on the system and they trust the system, they believe what these people tell them, and then and so the more control, I don't know where I'm going with this now, but it's just, it seems to be having it's really backfiring on them. It's really backfiring, because we've seen in the last few years that how much they've been exposed because they've tried to control more people on a mass scale.
Well, I think that's we have to hope for that positive thing, because my view is I was never in a position of saying I'm on some kind of mission to destroy our society or to decimate the system or anything like that. My view has always been that, you know, we have a democracy and it's something you clearly need to fight for lawfully. You know, and that we have a responsibility to try and bring the highest democratic principles back, which is open justice, which is sharing these stories of what's really happening, particularly around the cases of children and sexual abuse of children, and the outcomes of what's happening in not just the federal jurisdiction, but in the state jurisdiction, like my matter on April the 5th in Sydney District Court. It's my last day. That one, which is another big one. We won't go into that now. But the importance of these cases, this is involving the abuse of our children and the system that's failing those children. And we're talking about thousands of children. This is not a small affair, you know. And Russell's case and Anne and Patrick's typifies something happening on the federal level. And my case typifies what's going on the state level, which is more like child protection issues. And we can go into that more later. But this is really important. This is why I think it's so important as individuals and as a society, we step up. We have to do something. Like I can't just sit with this, just like Patrick and Russell. I can't just sit there and go, oh, that's fine. Like, you know, these children are being abused and this situation is terrible, and you should not criminalize people for believing they were doing the right thing. It's ridiculous. We've got much better things. Why don't you go and hunt down real criminals? You know?
Well, from what I'm hearing about these judges and what they're getting away with, the AFP, CDPP, you know, the more awareness we do bring around to this issue, well, hopefully we can flush these people out of the system. Whether the system is going to be able to be reproduced in a way where it's more abiding by natural law principles of doing no harm to another, really. You know, because that's
well, it's not, I don't think it's a case of like, you know, every person's corrupt in a system. I think, we've always tried, even Graham Bell said that we try to accommodate the utmost respect for judges as the way it's supposed to be. But the problem with this thing when it's failing is I'm losing confidence because of the decisions that are being made and how it's limited the system. Now, either the judge is doing the wrong thing and supporting the government, or the judge is bound by the statute to do something wrong, but that clearly can't be correct because the statute's there. Like, you know, there are defenses, self-defenses in statute law. You know, it's part of our legal system. There's a number of things. I think it's 70 NAE of the Family Court Act and 286 of the Queensland Criminal Code. If I could be wrong, but I think those were the ones which say you have a lawful right to protect children, and it's the right thing to do. If you believe the child's at risk of harm, then you should protect that child. You're actually doing something lawful.
That's right.
Not something illegal. So the problem is when something that's right and just becomes a crime, we have a serious problem. You know, perhaps we should leave it at that. You know?
Yeah, let's do that. So this has been a really, really great chat. Thanks, Paul, again. And we'll obviously thanking again to Anne and Patrick for having a chat and coming on. I know it's you know, what a battle, what a journey they're on. And I guess we'll see each other next week.
See each other next week if I don't talk to you before, but thank you for your time again and all your good work, Julia, much appreciated. And I suppose for those people out there, what can I do to help? PaulRobertBurton.com. There is a Protecting Our Children and Grandchildren little fundraiser page. I'm not really pushing the fundraiser. It's just got all the details about the case. More importantly, we want attendance and we want people to talk about this matter. We've raised, I think, $3,652, but however, Russell's tried to engage counsel at the moment. He may have counsel on the 15th, but that's already costing upwards of 30 grand, and he's borrowed money off his family because he doesn't have any. So we're never going to achieve anything in that end. And aside from the fact that we feel it was really important for Russell to at least have some representation to try and get this argument across properly, I'm almost of the view now that we don't really want to give money back to a system that's failing everyone anyway. I'm self-represented in my cases, but I'm lucky because some people might say otherwise, but I feel I'm reasonably intelligent, but I can speak and I can run my own cases, and I've learned.
You do it well, and you do it well. I've witnessed it myself. So you did really
so
well.
I can argue my case, you know, but a lot of people are not so fortunate, and some people struggle, like they don't even know how to use computers. I've dealt with Indigenous people that can't even read and write, and they're horribly disadvantaged in this system. Horribly disadvantaged, and that's not fair. You know, it's not part of a fair process. You know. Anyway.
All right. Well, please share this video out there, guys, and show your support in whichever way you can. Talk about it with your friends and family. Research it yourself. There are lots of cases like this happening around Australia. It's just about trying to find it, because it is being, it's not available to the public. They're not making these cases available to the public very easily. So, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video.
All right, beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.